This freeloading moocher got aggressive with his father and tries to blame his parents for being enablers, so the judge called on his father to the stand.
Here's my question. Why were you, as a 38-year-old, living with them in the first place?
Well, over a decade ago, I'll admit that I was a drug addict, and my parents were enablers. They didn't want to kick me out on the street. They didn't want to, despite me stealing, thieving, and whatnot. That day, I reacted in a horrible way towards my father because I lost my cool and I lost my power. I was never bipolar. I never had bipolar 1, never had bipolar 2. I never needed that medication.
He was diagnosed, that's true. And his ex convinced him that he wasn't bipolar and he quit taking the medications. I'm not a physician, but the physician said he was bipolar. But a friend said he wasn't. So he decided to go with what the friend of the ex said. I never understood why him not being on medication. And I'm not a doctor, but like when he was on the medication, it seemed like it was happening. He has a pleasant personality, but like I said, for me, on the 26th of August, Jamal beat me with a metal cane. Like I was a piece of meat. He told me and my wife that we had aliens in my backyard. The Masons was after him. My Wi-Fi had been hacked and all this other stuff. My wife and I have been dealing with that most of his adult life.
The court will sentence you to 4 years deferred adjudication. All right, court is calling 2024 CR 011671, State of Texas versus Jamal Ricardo Fisher. If I could have parties announced for the record for the state.
For the state of Texas.
Defense.
Attorney Albert Osvaldo for Mr. Fisher.
And are you Mr. Fisher?
Yes, ma'am.
Counsel, have you received all discovery?
Yes, Your Honor.
And did you review it with your client?
I did.
Court will find that the state is in compliance with discovery. Ms. Abrams, this is an application. Did you review the application for deferred adjudication with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you review the true bill of indictment with your attorney? Did you understand it?
Yes, ma'am.
Counsel, do you waive the reading of the indictment?
I do, Your Honor.
State, are you proceeding on the indictment as presented?
No, Your Honor, proceeding on count 2. Waive count 1.
Any objection to the waivers?
No objections, Your Honor.
Did you review the court admonishments with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it in all the appropriate places?
Yes, ma'am.
You're charged with injury to the elderly or disabled with intentional bodily injury. That's a third-degree felony. Range of punishment is anywhere from 2 to 10 years in prison and up to a $10,000 fine. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
If you have a plea bargain agreement with the state, the court does not have to follow your plea. If for any reason the court does not follow your plea and gives you more than you bargained for, the fact that you entered a plea will not be used against you, and you will be allowed to withdraw your plea. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
You have a right to jury trial, a right for you or your attorney to cross-examine and confront any witnesses the state would call, and the right to remain silent. By entering this plea, you are giving up those rights. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you intend to give up those rights and enter into a plea in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand if the court were to grant your application for deferred adjudication, if for any reason your deferred adjudication were revoked, the court could find you guilty and sentence you up to 10 years in the prison and up to a $10,000 fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Counsel, has your client been able to provide you with any defenses?
Your Honor.
Do you believe he has a rational as well as a factual understanding of the charges against him?
I do, Your Honor.
Do you believe he's currently competent and was legally sane at the time of the offense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Fisher, has anyone threatened you, coerced you, or placed you in fear to get you to enter this plea?
No, ma'am.
Anyone promised you anything other than the plea?
No, ma'am.
Are you satisfied with the way you've been represented?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Court will find that defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived his right to jury trial. Did you review the plea bargain page with your attorney? Did you understand it?
Yes, ma'am.
According to the plea, the state is proceeding on count 2. There's a $1,500 fine. State recommends deferred adjudication. There's an affirmative finding of family violence. There's to be no contact with the complainant and a mental health evaluation. Did you understand that to be the plea?
Yes, ma'am.
Defense, is that the plea?
It is, Your Honor.
State, is that the plea? Did you review the waiver of appeal paragraph with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it in both places?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand by signing that you're waiving your right to appeal? The only items that can be appealed are written pretrial motions that have been filed, heard, and ruled upon by the court. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Counsel, are there any such motions?
None, Your Honor.
Outside the agreement, the state is requesting that your deferred adjudication be for a term of 4 years. There'll be 60 hours community service restitution, anger management, MRT, and follow all recommendations from the mental health evaluation and TAP. Did you understand those were recommendations from the state and the court does not have to follow those recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Then to the offense as charged in count 2, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
No contest.
State, any evidence?
No objections, Your Honor.
Right, did you review the waiver and consent to stipulations of testimony and stipulations with your attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand it and sign it in all the appropriate places?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, did you understand you have a right to jury trial, a right for you or your attorney to cross-examine and confront any witnesses the state would call, and the right to remain silent?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand that today the state will be presenting evidence in the form of witnesses' statements and police reports? But most importantly, there'll be no live testimony. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Court will find that defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived and consented to stipulation of testimony and stipulations. Court will accept into evidence state's exhibits 1 and attachments and review the same. After reviewing state's exhibits 1 and attachments, the court will find there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty. Court will defer finding of guilt as you applied for deferred adjudication. Are you proceeding with sentencing?
We are, Your Honor.
Anything you wish to say on behalf of your client?
We're asking that you follow the plea bargain agreement, Your Honor. My client's been in custody since the offense date back in August of 2024. He's had an opportunity to think about, why he's here today and actually accept responsibility. He understands that if granted the application for probation, daunting that it may be, but in speaking to him, he's ready to move on with his life and make a difference. He understands what he did was wrong. And I believe he has something to tell you, Judge. If he can.
Oh, if you have something you wish to tell me, I'll place you under oath.
I'm sure.
All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
My name is Jamal Ricardo Fisher.
All right, what do you wish to say?
Miss Boyd, I can tell, even taking the glasses off, I'm nearsighted. Both of you and I have these little scars right here from our glasses. And I was listening to you earlier. Without my glasses on, I can barely see you. 6 months ago, on August 26th, I reacted to what I felt had been 2 years of a nightmare. I have lived with my parents for 38 years, and they're the best things that have ever happened to me. I couldn't see the forest through the trees because what was happening to me had never happened before in my life. That day, I reacted in a horrible way towards my father because I lost my cool and I lost my power. The last 6 months of my life have been the best 6 months of my life because I've gotten in touch with myself and I've remembered a very important thing, that no matter what I'm going through, and no matter what anyone is going through, how I choose to react to it is completely and totally up to me. And these days, I choose happiness. I cry a lot because it's been a long 6 months. And the last 2 or 3 of them, I haven't spoken to my family. Well, last 6, I haven't talked to my dad. Last 2 or 3, I haven't talked to my mom. And I've lived with them for the entire 38 years of my life. What happened to me didn't just happen to me, it happened to us. But my parents were never to blame. And I couldn't see that because of, lack of communication, being a 38-year-old and immature in some parts. But I'm glad to be before you today. And I when I say that the last 6 months have been the best 6 months of my life, I don't intend or want to be back in jail. But it was time that I needed to listen to myself. It was time I needed to listen to God. It was time I needed to really reflect, not just on, the time in here, but the last 38 years of my life. And I'm happy standing before you and my parents today, knowing that God gave me a reason for existing, and it's to bring happiness to myself, my family, and anyone else that I encounter. And no matter what I'm going through in life, no matter how hard it is, I don't have to not be happy. And I surely don't have to take my unhappiness in a moment out on someone, especially not my dad.
Any questions? Anything
For the
else?
bench, Your Honor.
So here's my question. One, it appears that you're not going to be allowed to live with your parents. So why were you, as a 38-year-old, living with them in the first place?
Oh, well, over a decade ago, I'll admit that I was a drug addict, and my parents were enablers. They loved me as much as a parent could love their child, and then some. And so they didn't want to kick me out on the street. They didn't want to, despite me stealing, thieving, and whatnot. That was not the case over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years, I have done anything and everything I could to get a job. Actually, let me take that back. At the beginning of those 2 years, I was completely sober In a 2-week span, I had gotten off of all pharmaceutical medications. I decided I no longer wanted to smoke cigarettes, which I had been doing since I was legally allowed to smoke cigarettes, and I no longer wanted to use. And I kept that promise to myself for nearly a year. I was racially profiled and wrongly terminated from my job, fell off that horse, but I remained sober. I didn't smoke cigarettes, and I just decided to get back on that horse. Only I didn't get back on it. After a month of not having any work, I was fine. After 3 months of not having any work, not so much. After 6 months of not having any work, of having my parents' Wi-Fi hacked, my cell phone hacked, of having people whose identities I still don't know listen on my phone calls, things were getting testy.
So let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
Your prescribed medications, what were they for?
When I was 21, I was a full-blown heroin addict, and I was depressed because I was a full-blown heroin addict. I'd swallowed 1,300 milligram trazodones because I was tired of my life. I was hospitalized off of Floyd Curl for 7 days, and part of my discharge paperwork was to go see
Okay, here's the thing. I need you to slow down because the court reporter has to take down
I
everything.
apologize. I was hospitalized up to the hospital of Floyd Curl, because Methodist. Part of my discharge paperwork was to see if this man, his name was Dr. Moody, not making that up. He talked to me for 35 minutes and said that I had bipolar 2 disorder, prescribed me lithium and clonazepam, and I was 21, max 22. At the time, because I was raised to respect my elders and because I was in the hands of a doctor, I just kind of said, okay. I was never bipolar. I never had bipolar 1, never had bipolar 2, but for over a decade, I kept taking clonazepam. Lithium I got off within about 2 years. But I never needed that medication. I never needed lithium. And it took my ex, who I was then with, to wake me up to the fact that I didn't need to be on that benzo.
And do you have any children?
No, ma'am, I wish I did.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
No other questions?
All right. So, is his father here?
Oh, I think you
All right, if we can have his father come up, please.
gonna step aside.
Yes. So, could you raise your right hand for me, please?
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
James Henry Fisher.
All right. So both parties have agreed for your son to have probation.
Yes, ma'am.
And part of my job is to put in place conditions that will help him be rehabilitated and help him with whatever issues he may have.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't do cookie cutter probations. Everybody doesn't receive the same conditions. So what is it you think he needs? Is there some mental health issues going on here?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
When he's talking about being diagnosed for bipolar, he was diagnosed, that's true. And when he says his ex convinced him that he wasn't bipolar and he quit taking the medications, mom goes through mood swings.
Mhm.
And like I said, I'm not a physician, but the physician said he was bipolar.
Okay.
But a friend or his ex said he wasn't. So he decided to go with what the friend of the ex said.
Mhm.
And when I said mood swings, it's 1 minute he's happy and up and everything's great. The next minute, the world is crumbling. And then there's an anger part of that. Okay. And my wife and I have been dealing with that most of his adult life. He has a pleasant personality, but like I said, for me, on the 26th of August, Jamal beat me with a metal cane like I was a piece of meat.
Mhm.
Okay. And broke into the house, did a whole bunch of negative stuff that you all have records for. I never understood why. Today, I don't understand why.
Mhm.
Okay, but some of the same things that he's saying to you as far as the ex convincing him not to take the medication and him not being on medication. And I'm not a doctor, but like when he was on the medication, it seemed like it was happening. Okay. He has had an issue with maintaining jobs. He told me and my wife that we had aliens in my backyard. The Masons was after him. My Wi-Fi had been hacked and all this other stuff. Now, I don't know if the Wi-Fi was hacked or not. It could be because it happens all the time. But as far as some of this other stuff, but there's Masonic lodge down from my house.
Mhm.
He talked about going down there blowing up the lodge. And I'm like, Jamal, those folks aren't messing with you. Okay. But he had a couple of pictures on his phone where he felt that people were following him and this type of stuff. And to me, that was all the mental part. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying I'm correct, but he just made me feel that way.
So let me ask you, do you think it would help him? Because they do have placement in a mental facility
Mhm.
to make sure that he is on his medications, to make sure he has a case manager.
Mhm.
Do you think that's what he needs and that's what would help him.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, when I talked to the DA's Mrs. Jones this morning, and she was talking about what could happen, like as far as 2 to 10 years, of type of stuff, and I told her that if Jamal went to jail for 10 years, that's still not going to help him because he has mental issues, in my opinion. So my focus is, even though he assaulted me, is he's my son. I love him. I love him till I leave this earth. But he actually needs some help. Okay, and he doesn't understand that or doesn't see that. You can ask my wife; she's here, and we've been dealing with him for 30 years. And
So I will tell you what my plan is with
Yes, ma'am.
conditions,
Mhm.
is to get him help for mental health issues. The question is whether or not you want to have phone contact, but because before he has in-person contact with you outside of court settings,
Mhm.
I like to start people off slow.
Right.
So are you okay with him speaking to you just by phone or speaking to your wife by phone?
He talks to her now.
Okay.
Okay, so he hasn't talked to me since the 26th of August, and I don't have an issue with that. Okay.
All right. So what I can tell you is I'll start off with the contact will only be by phone, or either if you all want to do it by Zoom, but there'll be no in-person contact.
Mhm.
And once a doctor or therapist or probation says to me that it would be safe for him to have in-person contact with his parents, and you all are okay with that, then I'll strongly consider his having in-person contact.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
All right. Is there anything else I need to know about your son?
Other than that, like I said, I don't know what made him do what he did. His whole adult life or his whole life, we've been trying to just be decent parents. And I got 4 kids.
Mhm.
And the only time I've been in a courtroom like this was with Jamal. Okay, several years ago, same thing. Okay, so, and that's what I was telling the attorney. I don't know what will help him. I hope this is the last time that I have to come into a courtroom.
Well,
on a
I will
negative
tell you,
situation with
in
him.
my experience, a lot of mental health issues for males happen around the 18-year mark. For females, sometimes it's a little bit later. Sometimes it's mid-20s for females, but usually for males, the mental health issues, if they happen, usually around the 18-year mark. And when I say mental health issues, I don't mean mental health based upon traumatic things that happen. I mean the schizophrenia, the bipolar, that type of thing. All right. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
All right. This is what the court is going to do. There's a $1,500 fine that will be probated. The court will sentence you to 4 years deferred adjudication. If you complete everything early, the court will consider early termination. There's to be regular reporting by Zoom or in person. There's to be regular random UAs. How far did you go in school?
I completed trade school for welding, got my combination welder certification, and I also got my CDL.
All right, 100 hours of community service restitution. Probation, if he actually uses his CDL, then the court will consider waiving 50 of those hours. There is to be an affirmative finding of family violence. There's to be no in-person contact with the complainant or Maytum Circle, MAYTUM Circle. All right. Probation. Let's do a referral to felony court and let them know it's for dual diagnosis. And when felony court comes to speak to you, you need to let them know about the use. You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
And then there is going to be a MIC evaluation and DDRF. That's to be in custody. TAP evaluation in custody. Follow all recommendations. And I tell you what I'll do with the 100 hours of community service restitution? Because I don't know if this is an anger management issue or just some mental health issues. With the anger management, once he completes that, the community service hours will be deemed satisfied. Proof of employment or SSI within 45 days of release. There's to be no employment as a home health care provider or with minors. Field visits 1 time per month until further notice. And probation with regards to the field visits, once he has a case manager in place for a month, then the field visits can be as determined by probation. Probation, is there anything else? Yes. San Antonio, Texas. And
He
just
said it was Helotes, Your Honor.
Ah, well, you know what? They made a mistake in the police report. Is there anything else you need from the court to be, anything else you need from the court to be successful?
No, ma'am.
All right, did you review the document entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it?
Yes, ma'am.
Because this is a plea bargain agreement, because I followed your plea bargain agreement, because you waive your right to appeal, you do not have the court's permission to appeal. Because this is an affirmative finding of family violence, you're not allowed to own or possess any weapons or ammunition. If you have a question over what a weapon or ammunition is, you'll need to speak to an attorney. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we can go off the record. You have victim impact? Yes. All right, you may proceed.
Just Judge, sorry, one other thing. There is a protective order that was ordered. It's in place for 2 years. So I know the whole contact thing. I just wanted to make sure the
All right,
court's aware.
so the court was unaware of that. Since there's a protective order in place, you need to follow that protective order.
Yes, ma'am.
So if your mother is included in that protective order, you cannot have contact with her at all. If that's what it says.
She's the go-between between me and my dad. Not that I need to talk to my dad, but it was, as far as I know, it was established that I could call and talk to her.
All right, you all need to make sure that that's the case because I don't want any violation.
Yes, ma'am.
So probation with regards to his condition, I'm sorry, with regards to his conditions, there's to be no contact with the complainant. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right here.
This man was in denial and thought it was normal to be violent with his loved ones when he was angry, so the judge set him straight.
What's your issue?
Decisions.
I mean, I'm assuming you at one point loved the complainant. I don't think people should put their hands on someone in anger if you say you love them.
It's wrong decision, ma'am. Honestly.
I mean, but here's the thing. You have to figure out why are you making these wrong decisions. I don't know if alcohol is an issue with you, although when people say the alcohol made me do it, it's like, not really. You wanted to do that and the alcohol is just an excuse. Do you have anger issues?
I don't believe so.
Obviously you do, because this happened more than on one occasion. Did you love her?
Yes.
So what you visited upon her by being violent towards her, if you're in another relationship, you're going to be violent towards them because you don't know why you get angry and take it out on people who are weaker than you. If I could, I would put in my conditions that you're not allowed to be in any type of relationship until you figure out why you're so angry and why you want to abuse people that you say you love. I'm going to sentence you to 7 years deferred adjudication.